And so we have for Campbell the way of the animal powers, which is based on tension and the collision, the catastrophic impact of the hunter with the animal and violent death. Consequently, the dead in these societies are also generally feared rather than revered. In hunting societies, there's an obsession with ghosts and a lot of taboos that have to do with keeping the dead away. Whereas in the Neolithic, with the rise of the way of the planting, the way of the planters, the world of the plant becomes the primary thing. And it is probably also during this time, as Terence McKenna used to talk about, that the human being discovered through the use of plant-based hallucinogens, hallucinogenic substances like DMT and psilocybin mushrooms and so forth, a way to dissolve the microcosmic sheath that separates the human being as microcosm from the macrocosm, to dissolve it and achieve oneness, may have come out of this world of the plants, and the Great Mother is the primary figure to which the individual becomes merely a cell. Later, it's the individual as a cell in the mystical body of Christ. In the Catholic Church, back here in the Neolithic, I think the individual was thought of as a cell in the mystical body of the Great Mother. And human sacrifice begins to come in during this time and replace the death of the animal. The death of the animal now becomes the death of the human being, and the reason for that is because the human being is the incarnation of the original plant god who was killed and cut up and buried so that the first food plants could come into being from out of the remains of his body. So when the human being is being sacrificed in these Neolithic plant-based Dasein societies, you might say, it was a recognition of this plant-based myth of the human being incarnating the original, the maize god, the corn god, the wheat god, the palm tree god, the coconut god, or what have you, that came out of this. So that represents Campbell's application of Spengler's distinction between Voxine and Dasein to these two different historical forms of the primitive world that was largely invisible to Spengler until later on, after Decline of the West. He started to work on a new book that's never been translated, called Frühzeit der Weltgeschichte, The Dawn of World History, where he did go back and start working out the different phases of these primitive cultural forms. So getting back then to Spengler's distinction between Voxine and Dasein, in the world of Voxine, the waking consciousness that is configured is a waking consciousness based on its own polarity between sensation and understanding. And originally he says the two were identical, and the original sense is the sense of touch. It's the earliest of all senses, and at some point in the evolutionary process, the sense of touch differentiated out the eyeball, the eye, and created the world of light, the light world, and sensation began to discriminate and differentiate itself. And originally, and you can still see this today, when a dog hears something, he sniffs around, and he's understanding the world at the same time that he's sensing it, so that his senses are working at the same time with his intellect. They're identical with each other. But in the human world, what has happened is that the understanding has, over time, slowly divorced itself from sensation and created a form world of its own. Language, Spengler says, emancipates the understanding from sensation. And so it becomes a basic polarity. Then with regard to the realm, and it creates a form world based on concepts to do this. And once it does this, it can become captured into the mistaken assumption that it's thought that rules, as in Descartes, that thought is the mighty thing that rules, and the rhythms of the blood are secondary, whereas Spengler's going to say in good German romantic fashion that it's the blood that rules. The intellect is the servant of the blood, and comes into being only because the blood, the pulse beat rhythm, the Dasein is there first. Dasein produces Voxine. Dasein is primordial and produces Voxine, which emerges plant-like from out of it, just like an Indian myth where the god Brahma sits on the lotus that comes out of this dreaming god Vishnu, who's asleep. He sleeps, he's in the Dasein mode, and Brahma represents the Voxine waking consciousness mode. So in this world of waking consciousness, we have the differentiation of sensation from understanding. And within the realm of understanding, then we have another polarity where there are two different types of understanding, which in German philosophy is the difference between Verstand and Vernunft. And Verstand is the understanding. Spengler says it's the understanding, it's the understanding insofar as it's much closer to the sensation side. It's not creative. It's something that's essentially critical and dissective, whereas Vernunft is the visionary part of the intellect. It's the part that conceives ideas with a capital I in the Platonic sense, and is fundamentally creative. Visions and dreams, the visionary mode comes out of this. religion fundamentally in its springtime phase comes out of this. It creates a religious world picture that the later intellect man, the Socratic man, will come along and use the intellect, the understanding, to begin to sterilize it and pull it apart and dissect it and wipe it out. So that the man of intellect, of pure intellect, only of Verstand, is not fundamentally creative, but is critical only. So we've got this basic opposition in the realm of the human mind between the two different types of intelligence, and in this or that given philosopher, one or the other of these sides will come to predominate. The Verstand side or the Vernunft side will come to predominate. Then he says, as we move into the end of this first chapter, he gets into something that I think that rubs me the wrong way, and I think is Spengler at his worst, which is his distinction between the fact man and the man of intellect, the truth man. So after all this very complex, very subtle, nuanced, fine gradations, this theory of the evolution of consciousness, he comes down to this rather dull, drab idea that there are these two types of men, the Napoleon, Alexander, Caesar type versus the intellectual type. And he says that between the two of them, the fact man has largely scorn for the intellect man. This reminds me of the anecdote about I think it was Lord Macaulay, if I remember correct, who came up to Gibbon and said, commenting on his 3-volume Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, "Another damned fat book, eh, Gibbon? Scribble, 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 eh, Gibbon?" That dismissive attitude of the fact man, the statesman, toward the man of learning, Spengler really glorifies in that, and he over-polarizes it and makes it seem as though even though he's a man of intellect, that he's siding with the statesman, that the statesman, the Napoleon, the Alexander, does all these great world deeds and has no use for the intellect whatsoever. The intellect is the world of truths, and the man who writes book is simply living in a world that's removed and divorced from the world created by sensation, the world of the physical world of Voxine, of actuality, the realm of facts, not the realm of causes and truths. But the problem is he disparages the intellect man and says that basically the statesman, the fact man, has no need whatsoever for the creations of the intellect, and simply is the fact man who builds and creates civilization, which is the real thing, and the intellect, the man of learning, is simply a secondary phenomenon whose works hardly touch actuality at all and almost never have any effect on it. Spengler's actually dead wrong here. He seems to have forgotten that the man of action depends for his actions on the man of intellect before he does anything, or can even do anything. He forgets, for example, that Alexander kept a copy of the Iliad with him wherever he went. The Iliad formed his model for everything that he did, just as Napoleon kept a copy of Goethe's Sorrows of Young Werther with him, basically as his Bible. He loved it. It was his favorite book and one of his great motivations. Napoleon himself was very learned, very well read. Julius Caesar wrote books, as we all know, works of history. And the fact of the matter is that the great man of action, the man of deeds, the man of the sword rather than the pen, does indeed do his deeds in a way that apparently seems to be independent from the man of truths, but not quite, because everything that happens in civilization is a three-dimensional realization of ideas that have come from the mind of the truth man, the man of intellect, who always makes possible what the fact man can then go and do, whether he's constructing a building, whether he's conquering another people, or what have you. The ideas come first, and then the statesmen carry them out in one degree or another. He depends upon the ideas of the man of intelligence and intellect in order to do anything at all. So I think Spengler is being a bit inauthentic here, being pretentious, basically, in pretending to. I think what he's trying to do actually is ingratiating. He's trying to ingratiate himself to statesmen who will read his book and think that he represents some sort of misplaced statesman-type fact intelligence displaced into the body of an intellectual. I find that to be just all false. It's a pose. It's wrong. And the oversimplification between the fact man and the man of intellect is just that. It's an oversimplification. The two need each other. It may be the case that outside of civilization, if we erase the whole concept of human civilization, what matters, maybe, I suppose, in the struggle for survival is the strong man, the deeds of the the strong man who predominate over the weak man. But in the human world, and this may be true in animals, but in the human world, it's the man of truth that the fact man needs to make sense out of his life, or he becomes a victim of life. He may be capable of doing these great deeds, but as a human being, he's got an intellect, and that intellect needs to have a cognitive map to make sense out of the significance of what he's done. Otherwise, he'll be racked with anxieties, nervous ailments, phobias of any and all kinds, and he will become a victim of all different kinds of psychological defense mechanisms that will wreck him if he doesn't have a sage, a seer, an advisor, a shaman, a priest, to iron out these wrinkles in his psyche and make clear to him what the significances are of the deeds that he has performed. And also the poet to celebrate them in deeds. Every great Agamemnon, let's say, or an Odysseus needs a Homer to celebrate his deeds. A Beowulf needs whoever the anonymous author of the Beowulf epic was, to celebrate his deeds, to immortalize them in fame. Otherwise he would have been forgotten. So, with regard to the realm of human civilization, which is to say the creation of history is civilization, the deed man, the fact man, absolutely depends upon the man of intellect, whether it's in his early primordial archaic types as the seer, the oracle, the sage, the visionary, or the later types as the philosopher or the intellect. He needs that individual in order for civilization to take place at all. And so I don't want to belabor the point too much here, but I think that I do understand the point that the man of deeds generally has disdain for the book learner. I get that, I understand it, but there is no such thing, I think, as a man of deeds who doesn't depend for his actions to some degree on the intellect, on book learning in one form or another. And if the books aren't there, as in archaic phases of civilization, then it's oral traditions, oral poems, the utterances of the bard that he depends upon to then imitate and go out and perform his great deeds. Hitler, after all, before he set about on his conquests, makes everything that he's going to do clear by writing Mein Kampf, writes everything down, and has a plan for himself before he then goes on to proceed to imitate the conquests of Frederick the Great and the Anschluss of Austria and the conquest of Poland and so forth. All that is there already that he's got from the world of books before he actually goes out and does it. So Spengler's opposition is a false one, and you should be aware that I think it is a false one. But that's the opening chapter of Volume 2 of Decline of the West. So that sets us up for a new set of ideas. He'll take the ideas from the early book and apply them to more practical phenomena in this book, such as money, economics, the life of cities, in so sometimes surprising ways. So we'll leave it there for this discussion.